Right. So finding clients. So think of who you'd like to work with. And it's not just, oh, I want to work with Durst and Related and all those guys. Why do you want to work for them? And why would they want to hire you? And so you want to think about that. And what is it that you offer folks like that that will be beneficial to them? So this particular slide focuses more on the public sector procurement, where a lot of this information should be publicly available in terms of what previous RFPs they've had. So sometimes if you go through an exercise in a contract reporter, you could go into the archives of what RFPs had these folks issued in the past. If also, there should be a similar exercise in the city records. Capital plans, tough to find an archive. It's kind of like, this is what we have today, unless you go onto the Wayback Cafe, or Wayback Machine, where you could just dig deep, but that's kind of laborious. And who might need your services in the future? So depending on your level of services, I know some firms, everything they do is in response to a code update. And if one group has to update their facility due to a code, well, that should be a hint that if they need it, somebody else is going to need it. And with capital plans, it gives you an idea of what's on the horizon, but let's say the MTA's on the future, where they say, oh, we're going to release this RFP in August for this station. All right, that's cool. But August may come and go. Something might have happened. Maybe there was a supply chain issue, or say, well, we're still going to do this. We just don't know all, but it's still on a tickler. So I've overheard conversations with folks that they may provide a service, but not necessarily see an RFP for it, because there's a chance that, let's take Painsview. I don't recall ever seeing a painting RFP ever. Who's hiring the painters? So that's part of a large GC contract. Now, all right, now I have to look up GC contracts for a particular facility. Now I have to see who's bidding on it. I have to make my intros. So either your services are a direct hire with an agency, or it's part of the sub-consulting opportunity. So there's a whole lot of networking going on. And one thing I'm going to say to those who primarily do work as subs, one thing that I've learned is sometimes a sub-consultant is the best source of a project. Because there are times I've approached primes and say, hey, listen, I saw this RFP hit the street. Have you seen it? No, I haven't. Let's talk. And they appreciate you looking out for them. On the later slide, I'll get into how you could see who's purchased your services in the past. And I know it's great to say, oh, I want to build a book of business with 20 clients, but there's only so many hours in the day. So it's better for you to concentrate your efforts on, let's say, 3 to 5, because it keeps you focused and attentive on the 3 to 5 and what their respective needs are. Because when you're trying to spread yourself too thin with 10 to 20, something gets lost. Or you get busy, and then it's like, oh yeah, I was so busy chasing this guy, I lost track of all these others, and they forgot about me. And then you have to repeat the process again. And I mentioned earlier about having your target markets. And I've spoken to folks that say, oh, well, I could do anything for anybody, anywhere. It's like, I'd really love to, but it's not going to work. Because once again, it's like the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none. You are being brought on with your expertise. And they want to know, oh, hey, I'm in the K-12 market. I've learned a lot of stuff. Okay, great. And I know with certain markets, there may be some parallelisms. Like let's take We're in K-12, you've done a science lab. Okay, maybe I could take this over to healthcare because they got a lab. I've done a lab. But, that's a different strategy. So I don't want to say, oh yeah, you did something over at such and such high school and they could use knock on your Presbyterian door like, yo, I did this science lab. Let me do yours. That don't work. So with target markets, think of your competition. I do have a slide talking about competitive analysis. And also, is that particular market oversaturated? So there are a lot of considerations that you need to think about. I can't say enough. Think about what you do, what you're good at, who could use your services. So I mentioned earlier your competitive differentiators. Like, is there something that you do that not many people can? And that's going to be your hook. And Abner was mentioning your recent projects. Those are the ones that will likely lead you to more work. And those are the ones that folks are going to know. This is what you've done. You did a good job. I'm thinking about you for the next opportunity. And with the clients, think of who you're working for and what market sectors. And I know there's some folks who do service different markets. Think of your client breakdown and where folks are, what they do. And once again, something else to think about in terms of RFP decisions. Like, is it like a sole source where you could either sit down and say, you did a good job, there you go, let's rock? Or is it, I got to take this to committee, I got to give you an RFP, we have to make a decision, I have to sit with 5 of my colleagues, et cetera, et cetera. And you got to know who your competitors are. Because when you're going for a publicly sourced RFP, you're not going to be the only one pursuing it. Usually the rule is they want at least 3 responses before they proceed. Otherwise, they'll cancel the procurement and then reissue it, because they have to show that they've done your due diligence. And how do you find out who goes after the same work as you? Some clients are pretty good. I know OGS is pretty good in the respect of saying, oh, for this pursuit, we receive proposals from the following. I know OGS does it. DDC also does it. I say, oh, we received the following responses. Those are your competitors. So we get to get an assessment of, well, what are they doing? And are they doing something better than me? Or am I doing something better than them? Because the exercise is you want to highlight your strengths and mitigate your weaknesses. And I do have a later slide on performing SWOT analysis. And there it is. So, okay, SWOT analysis. Most people will go through this exercise where they prepare their marketing plan. And I don't know where everybody is with having an annual marketing plan. There are 3 plans that business should have. Your business plan. So if you're meeting up with your bank and you want to say what you do, how you do it, et cetera, like this is the why I'm in business. The other plan is your strategic plan, which is like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And it's like, I'm here today. This is where I like to be in 5 years. And your marketing plan, that's your annual plan to say, okay, let's say I'm not making any money today, but in 5 years, I see myself as $1 billion firm. All right. How do I incrementally get to $1 million? Do I go from 0 to 100, 0 to 200 this year? Great. How do I do it? And what am I going to do to get there? So think of your strengths and weaknesses. Now, strengths and weaknesses, that is something internal to you. That you could say, all right, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses. Now, the thing with strengths, it has to be something that only you can testify against that. Like, oh, I've been in business X number of years. Well, lots of people could claim that, but I just doing like some hypothetical strengths. How many people could claim that they had 85% repeat business? How many people can claim that they have low turnover, that they have, is one of the pet peeves that some clients have. It's just like, well, I don't want anything with that company because that place is a revolving door. I did one project. I went to 5 project managers. Like, no, we're not going to mess with that. Opportunities and threats, those are external and out of your control. Opportunities, that's something you could definitely capitalize on. Threats, well, you have to think about how you're going to handle that, because maybe a major competitor who wasn't in your market now moved it to the hood. So we got to think about that. So positioning yourself, and this is something that Abner mentioned earlier about positioning for new opportunities. You want to understand who you're targeting. There's only so many hours in the day, so you want to focus on where you're going to make money. And for emerging trends, when you're in touch with clients, may want to touch base and say, hey, listen, I was at this conference and I learned something. Have you heard about it? And I see people share articles and say, oh, I learned something at this event. I thought Eddie came. I'm going to share it with you. And I'll mention the awareness of client needs in a later slide, because you want to customize your messaging and you want to stay top of mind. I'm sure you'll cover some of the stuff. Because just some background about me. I presented something similar 2 years ago under the previous cohort, and I had the stage a long time. So I had to pare down my presentation in the interest of time. I think I had like nice swing slides.
We went from 3 hours to 2 hours.
Yeah. And then we'll talk about procurement. Now, you will get this deck. Like, these links all work. And the assumption is we're focusing on public sector procurement. And I say you want to see who's taking your services. So if your target is the SCA and you want to see both, who's also going after SCA work? You go on Checkbook NYC and then enter SCA inside. Okay. What checks did they cut and who they cut them for? And on the New York City procurement outline, that link is from the procurement fair, and whatever services you do, they have a laundry list of services and who hires those services. And also the city, they have a list of who the ACOs are. So let's say, all right, you're a widget provider and Department of Buildings, they're in the market for widgets. It's like, okay, who's the ACO for buildings? I'm going to introduce myself, as opposed to just, oh, there's 20 some odd agencies. I'm going to call them all. No, you're not. They don't all need you. And for the state, I would actually surprise. The Comptroller's Office has a directory of frequently purchased commodities and services. That book is 8 years old. I'm surprised they haven't updated it, but the state, they don't change anything. So once again, you'll go into seeing, well, what services do you provide and who hires for those services. And similar to Checkbook, OpenBook New York, you could go into what agencies have procured. Well, the problem with OpenBook New York, you could see, oh, the state DOT wrote a $2 million check to this company, but you don't know what they paid for. But it gives you an idea of, well, who are they hiring? And for the feds, for anybody who's navigating federal government, I'll give you forewarning. It is a little cumbersome, but it's just good to know where the feds are with your services. You put in your respective NAICS code and see, well, who hired? And then it's like additional drill downs. Because you will see that Department of Defense hire your NAICS code, but you're seeing a list of all over the country. I'm only worried about New York. And then you had a couple of other, USA Spending Acquisition Gateway. And I did talk about the capital plans earlier. It sets you up to think, all right, I've got this RFP coming up. And also another thing to take into consideration, I know some people who do this. If you see something coming out, let's say, I'm not going to say, oh, I have this RFP coming out next month. Let's say you see something coming out in, let's say, 6 months. If the agency is amenable, you could foil the previous proposal because it gives you the opportunity to see, well, who else competed on this and who won this and what do they have that I don't? And with prospects, this goes back to focusing on the top 3 to 5, or maybe 7 to 10, depending on what you do and where you do it. You want to think about, well, I'm going to put my effort where I'm likely to see a return. So obviously, the number of projects that they have on the horizon that could contribute to your firm's bottom line. And also, you have people that you want to keep working today. So it's like if they got something now or soon, we're finishing this project. I want to keep them working. I don't want them leaving me. I don't want to lay anybody off. And I mentioned on a previous slide with hot buttons or translation. What keeps your client up at night? Like what's bothering your client? What problem can you solve? And there's a gentleman who's in the previous cohort. I mean, he developed something and he went gangbusters. He is an engineer by trade, but he was able to marry drone technology into his service offerings. So it's not just, oh, I'm just a drone service. I'm an engineer by trade and I can see stuff that these other drone guys can't. And he's making bank.
Oh, yeah.
And remember, gotta make it about your client. Like I said, you could present the best messaging in the world, but if it doesn't speak to the client's needs, it's like, no, I can't hear you, not listening. Let me just get you out of my office and off my phone. So, depending on your level of relationship, ask questions that matter. And later, okay, so for pre-qualifying a project where we're looking at capital plans, and it's like, oh yeah, this project pays X. Oh, that will take care of me. But think about, can it properly deliver on this project? Because at the end of the day, you want to do a good job because it's easier to get a second job than a second chance.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with the client comes to you and said, listen, I have something for you. There's nothing wrong with you saying, hey, listen, thanks for the opportunity, but I don't think I'm appropriate because, and this goes back to being honest. And as Ahmed was saying, with having your network, it's like, all right, I might not be appropriate, but I think I know somebody who is. One, the client will appreciate honesty. And 2, your colleague will appreciate the referral and hopefully good karma will come back to serve you. And the other thing to think about for a project, when you think about, all right, I got this project, this is going to keep me busy for X. Now, I'm assuming you had a project across your desk, you already have a full workload. How are you going to properly execute that project? I recently encountered a situation where a client got pulled onto something at the last minute. And then they already had a full workload. They essentially had to divert their existing resources to execute this project. Yeah, long story, but it happens. But it's not something that goes on my worst enemy. And for an RFP, this is where you do all your preliminary research. So sometimes a project will hit the street in response to another project. I'll just make up the scenario just to make up the scenario. So Avalon, they acquired a bunch of land and they're putting up a 2,500 unit apartment complex. That's 2,500 units. Somebody's got to have some kids coming in. And if you have 2,500 units, somebody coming in with some kids, what's going to come afterwards? A school probably. So somebody's going to add to that. Maybe there's another park coming in. So there's certain clues that we can follow. Or Avalon, same 2,500 units, but it's a 55 and over community. What's going to follow? A medical complex. Because, the older we get, we're booking our calendars around doctor's appointments. What are the goals? Like what, is this project solving a problem? Is it a replacement? Is it in response to something? Because sometimes some projects we see are in response to, sadly, a tragedy. And there may be code updates. Because I remember years ago, down in Florida, they updated their building codes to have blast-resistant windows that withstand winds of 150 miles per hour. We don't need windows like that up here, but it's not, so you can't, what works in one area doesn't necessarily work up here. It's like, what's the strongest wind we get up here? I mean, we get some strong wind, but we're not getting 150 miles yet. Bagels. And what would make this project a success?